Ryan Glover here. I wanted to do this video about Kamala Harris, and I'm supporting her for president in 2024. And it's not because I agree with everything that she stands for politically, because there's a lot of things that I disagree with her politically. But one thing that I do believe is that she's a more qualified leader than Donald Trump. I feel that Donald Trump, his past history, that illustrates that he's racist. He's done some good things, but I feel he panders to the black community a lot. And I'm just not here for it. I mean, I think our country doesn't need to be in another pandemic. When Donald Trump got rid of the pandemic response team and COVID happened. I think we all saw that this country was on the brink of civil war. He's very divisive for America. He's not good for democracy. There's a lot of things about Donald Trump, just historically, you're from the Central Park Five, the not renting to African Americans, that is atrocious. He's done some good things as president. There are some arguments to say that maybe he's not a racist, but what I see about Kamala Harris is she has a history of a career in politics, and I know a lot of people say about career politicians, but I think the things that I hear from the right where she's not qualified, it's just a racist rhetoric. That you hear from Republicans typically, that a black woman, slept her way to the top. I feel with Kamala, she's really put in the work. She went to Howard, she went to law school, she worked as a prosecutor. A lot of people there's no such thing as meritocracy in society. Everyone gets to where they are because of the people that they know who helped them along the way. No one's self-made. So the right needs to stop that. Donald Trump came from a rich family. He had all the advantages in the world to become a successful businessman. He didn't get it out the mud. Kamala actually came from a background where she had to work for what she's achieved, and I think that's really inspiring and more so illustrative of the American dream. I think her husband he seems a wonderful man. I met him, Doug Emhoff, he was really kind, and I just think that she's a better leader. She's more qualified. She's a better speaker. She's more classy. And one of the things I'm also tired of hearing about is that she's not black. She's lying about her identity, and there's no advantages to being black in America. This is a very racist country. I think that race is a social construct, number one, and life started on the continent of Africa. At the end of the day, we're all black if you really think about it, because everyone came from Africa. So I just think people need to stop with the silly rhetoric and the silly things that you hear online. I think that Kamala Harris is a black woman, and she also is East Indian. A lot of people are saying her father didn't identify as black, and maybe there is some truth to that. Okay, so she's East Indian. Race shouldn't even be a factor. I think the important thing is who's the best leader and who has a history of championing people's rights. And I think she does a better job. Not to say that there's things in her past, I will admit her time as the Attorney General of California, but being someone who has done time in LA County, I kind of look at it from the perspective now of the people who are victims. They want to get justice. People who have been victimized want to be able to call the police and see justice. And so I don't really think that the way that she's been labeled, the way she's been depicted, is fair. I think she would be an excellent president, and her leadership is actually awe-inspiring. I'm going to be voting for Kamala Harris. I encourage you to definitely don't vote for Donald Trump. He's a horrible person. And I'll just tell this little story, man, how I know that Donald Trump is racist. I actually got invited to the White House. I disclosed my background, of being a felon by Turning Point USA, and I showed up to the event. I bought a $2,000 suit, and I went to the White House, and I was denied entry because I was a felon, which I had disclosed to them prior. It was a Turning Point USA, the Black Leadership Summit. and I wasn't allowed into the White House, and I'm a veteran. I also, like, they wasted my time. Like, I think, like, and they were just so cold and horrible, like, the way, like, I was treated, and, like, would take away, like, the opportunity from my family. I could have did something. I had better things to do with my time. I could have went to, I was living in Cambridge at the time. They was doing this event, like, with Rachel True, and I asked them because I was concerned about, like, my background preventing me from getting into the White House, and I wasn't allowed into the White House, and I feel like that was racist. And, I think, like, a lot of the people and stuff in the Republican Party are just too much coons. I think, like, some of their arguments that make sense. I do believe in free market capitalism, but, like, the cooning needs to stop. Like, as far as, like, there's no way, like, that black people are still supporting Donald Trump after all the horrific things that, like, has been done in this country to African Americans. The fact that he wants to give immunity to police officers, who are continuously killing black and brown people, should be something that is concerning if you love people, if you love America. And I just think, like, that Kamala is, like, the better choice. And I think, like, that people need to stop with the nonsense.